Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if the people around you actually change how you feel about handling your pain? Well, this new study dives deep into just that. We all know that living with long-term pain is tough. It is not just about the physical hurt, but also how we think and feel about our ability to manage it. Scientists have talked a lot about this feeling of being capable called self-efficacy and how it helps people cope. But a long time we've mostly looked at what it means for a person inside themselves to feel capable. This new research asks a super interesting question. How much do the people and the whole social world around us shape our confidence to deal with pain? Think about it like this: your own experiences are important, but so are your friends, family, colleagues, and even how you see yourself fitting into the bigger picture. So what's the big idea here? Researchers noticed that while we have scales to measure how confident people are in managing pain, these scales don't really dig into where that confidence comes from, especially the social side of things. They point out that our confidence or self-efficacy is built up from things like actually doing something and succeeding, seeing others do it, what people tell us, and even how our body feels. The social world plays a huge role in all of this. For example, if your friends are always telling you you're strong and can handle it, that can really boost your confidence. Or if you see someone else with similar pain successfully doing something you thought you couldn't, that can give you hope. The problem was, a lot of existing pain questionnaires didn't really capture these social sources of confidence. They might ask if you can socialize, but not how socializing helps build your belief in your ability to manage pain. To fix this, the brilliant minds behind this study created a brand new questionnaire called the Pain Self-Efficacy Social Sources Scale, or PSE's 3S. They wanted to make sure it captured not just your confidence in doing things despite the pain, but also the social stuff that builds up or wears down that confidence. They thought about things like how much support you feel you get, what you learn by watching others, and the overall quality of your social world. They also considered the different areas of life where pain can hit hard, like physical activities, moving around, and even just talking about your pain. So how did they test this new questionnaire? They didn't start with people who have chronic pain. Instead, they got 229 adults from the general population through an online platform called Prolific. Why do this? Well, they figured that almost everyone has experienced some kind of pain, and people in the general population can still reflect on their own past pain experiences. This helps them get a feel for how the questionnaire works before they try it on a group with chronic pain. They made sure that everyone spoke French, since the questionnaire was in French, and collected some basic information about the participants, like their age and gender, but they kept everything anonymous to protect privacy. Scroll, the final analytic sample, therefore comprised 229 participants, 6.03 per item. Scrape, they had 38 questions in their brand new questionnaire. These questions were designed to cover different aspects of self-efficacy and its social sources. For example, some questions might ask how confident you feel doing certain physical activities, while others would ask about how much support you get from others, or if you learn from people who have gone through similar pain. They used the scale from 0 to 100 for people to rate their confidence, giving them a lot of flexibility in their answers. After collecting all the data, they did some fancy statistics to see if the questionnaire actually measured what they thought it would. Scroll exploratory factor analysis scrape, the main goal was to see if the questions would group together into meaningful categories, or what scientists call factors. They used a method called exploratory factor analysis. Think of it like taking a bunch of puzzle pieces and seeing how they naturally fit together to form a picture. They also used something called parallel analysis, which is a way to figure out the best number of groups or factors to look for. Scroll figure 4, factor loading matrix for the 6-factor solution. Scrape, what they found was pretty neat. The analysis revealed the 6-factor structure, which means their questionnaire seemed to be measuring 6 distinct but related things. 3 of these factors were about the actual areas of life where people use their self-efficacy, physical activity, and leisure, feeling independent or autonomous, and communicating about their pain experience. This part made a lot of sense and lined up with what they expected. Scroll table 5. Factors labeled SRAPE, the other 3 factors were all about the social sources that build up that self-efficacy. They found a factor for social support, which is pretty straightforward. They also found a factor for vicarious learning, which is all about learning from or being inspired by others with similar experiences. But the most interesting one was a factor they called perceived social belonging. This factor captured how people felt connected to their social environment, their social life, and how lonely or not they felt. This is important because chronic pain can really make people feel isolated. Scroll-Fee's results provide preliminary evidence that the social conditions shaping pain-related self-efficacy can be operationalized and empirically distinguished within a single instrument. Scrape, interestingly, the factors related to social dimensions like social support, vicarious learning, and social belonging tended to be correlated with each other. This means that if you feel a lot of social support, you might also feel more connected to others and more likely to learn from them. However, the factors related to actual actions like physical activity and autonomy were largely independent of these social factors and each other. This suggests that while the social environment influences your beliefs, your confidence in performing actions might be a bit more distinct. Scroll internal consistency scrape, they also checked how well the questionnaires questions work together consistently. They found that the overall questionnaire was very reliable, meaning it generally produced consistent results. But they also noted that while the total score was reliable, a good chunk of the variation in those scores came from the specific factors, not just one big general self-efficacy idea. This again points to the idea that this questionnaire is measuring several distinct but related things, especially those social aspects. Scroll intercorrelation coefficients right now. What does this actually mean? This study offers the first real look at whether we can measure the social sides of pain self-efficacy as its own thing. They were able to show that the social stuff, like support, learning from others, and feeling a sense of belonging, can be measured and seen as separate from just how confident you feel doing things. This is a big deal because it suggests that when we treat chronic pain, we need to pay attention to a person's social world. Scroll social support F1 and vicarious learning F6 aligned more closely with social sources of self. Efficacy, namely verbal persuasion and peer-based learning, Scrape, the researchers mentioned that some of the questions they initially designed didn't quite work out as expected. For example, some questions about social support from family and friends didn't fit into a clean social support factor. They think this might be because of the specific mix of people in their general population sample, where many held professional jobs. They wonder if, in a group of people with chronic pain, these support-related items might form clearer groups. Also, while they expected to find a strong vicarious learning factor, some items that were supposed to measure learning from others ended up loading more onto social support, or even seemed to be about general social norms rather than learning from pain peers. This means the questionnaire might need some tweaking in future versions. Scroll autonomy F3 directly operationalizes the perceived capability to resist that pressure. Carros et al. 2018. Scrape, one of the really interesting things they discussed is how their autonomy factor relates to existing ideas about pain. They highlight that chronic pain can make people feel dependent on others. And this autonomy factor directly measures how confident someone feels about pushing back against that dependency. They also noted that the perceived social belonging factor, which came from questions asking people to compare themselves to the general population, seemed to capture a sense of connection and loneliness more than a strict social status. Scroll, unlike principal component analysis, the rotated factor solution in exploratory factor analysis does not enforce orthogonal factors. Permitting interfactor correlations, Scrape, the way the different factors correlated with each other, also tells a story. The social factors like support, communication about pain, social belonging, and vicarious learning were all somewhat linked. This makes sense. If you have good support, you might feel more comfortable talking about your pain, feel more connected, and be more open to learning from others. The more action-oriented factors like physical activity and autonomy were more on their own. This suggests a kind of division between the social influences and the actual functional confidence. Scroll, the notable discrepancy between hierarchical H and total lends further support to a multidimensional model, separating general self-efficacy from its social sources, though dedicated studies are required to formally validate this structural distinction. Scrape, the study acknowledges some limitations. First, because they used a general population sample from an online platform, it might not perfectly represent everyone, especially people with chronic pain who might have different social experiences or challenges. Also, the number of participants per question was on the lower end of what's ideal for a first exploration. They also didn't include other established pain questionnaires in this initial study, so they couldn't directly compare their results to those. The next big step is to use this refined questionnaire with people who actually have chronic pain, scroll limitations and constraints on generality Scrape. So what's the takeaway here? This research is a really important first step in understanding how our social world plays a crucial role in how we believe we can manage chronic pain. They've developed a tool, the PSE's 3S, that seems to be able to capture these social sources of self-efficacy separately from just measuring confidence in performing tasks. This is huge because it means that future interventions or support for people with chronic pain could be more targeted, not just focusing on how to do things, but on improving the social connections and support systems that build up a person's belief that they can do them. It's like realizing that while you need to teach someone how to swim, you also need to make sure they have a safe pool and friendly faces cheering them on. Scroll conclusions scrape the idea that our confidence in dealing with pain is shaped by the people around us, and that this can be measured opens up a whole new avenue for helping people. Imagine therapists being able to ask specific questions about social support or how patients are learning from others, and then using that information to tailor treatment. This study is basically adding another layer to our understanding of chronic pain, showing that it's not just a personal battle, but one that's deeply interwoven with our social fabric. It's exciting to think about how this could lead to more effective ways to help people live better lives despite their pain. I am really looking forward to seeing this questionnaire tested more with chronic pain patients to see how it holds up and where it can be improved. What do you think? Does this resonate with your experience? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more explorations of fascinating psychology research. We'll see you in the next video.